Hello, everyone, and welcome to Convetted. And today we're going to be talking about the future of ethics and corporate sustainability in retail. And with me, I have our illustrious facilitator, Bill Bowie. This is theme number 4, talking about political activism. Would love to have you introduce yourself and some of the key panelists that are in the conversation with you.
Yeah, that's great. I'm Bill Bowie, as you mentioned. I'm a co-founder of Convetted, and so I've done many of these virtual dialogues, discovery boards, and I'm particularly pleased to be doing this board on retail as it intersects with ethics and sustainability, in part because of the background that I have, having written the first ever sustainability report for Walmart back in 2007. So this is an issue that I've been covering for more than a decade. We've also got some really great participants as panelists in this discovery board who bring their own expertise to the table. In particular, some of the outstanding participants in this theme have been, again, Bill Roth has been consistently a strong voice, as well as Josh Tantrum, both of whom I've interacted with in other boards, and they consistently provide high quality input. We've also got Lise Lauren. I've been really impressed at how Lise has been opening up our eyes to perspectives that aren't coming out from other participants as much, and so giving a real nice, well-rounded aspect to the board and the themes. So this theme, we've made it through the value cycle, if you will, from the first theme of upstream product creation through environmental impacts and social impacts of the retail industry. And now we're into political activism, so the intersection of politics with ethics and sustainability. And so we were really kind of looking at what the proper role of retailers is when it comes to politics. And really, it was the most lively discussion of all of the themes so far. If I had to distill it down to 2 key points, it would be Ushma Pandaya made the clear-sighted distinction between issues on the one hand and politics on the other hand. The other issue that was really a strong one, I believe, was the idea that politics really differ widely between individuals and also across cultures. So it's really hard for retailers to align with specific political messages given the diversity of the constituencies that they serve. I wanted to delve into a number of quite specific points. One was the notion of issues versus politics. So more specifically on that issue, Ushma Pandaya said, I would argue that brands should be active on issues that align with their brand value or promise because their consumers may expect it. But brands should stay away from politics, that it is a fine line to walk. And that was really the key point that for me was overarching throughout the entire theme. Alexandra Sokol underlined this fine line and said that we might have to define politics in terms of candidates or parties versus human equity issues. There was a notion of sort of activism beyond these cultural boundaries that can align to geographic boundaries as well. So Josh Tantrum says that companies who are truly engaged in sustainability will need to undertake activities within their own direct spheres of control and influence, but then they also have to engage more widely in activities around evolving norms, values, and the rules of business. So Lise Lauren also chimed in on this particular key point, saying, assuming there are values, drivers, and rules that we can adjust to accelerate sustainable business, how do we identify them? And then once identified, how do we go about adjusting them? This brings us to key point number 3, which was really around the Supreme Court case of Citizens United here in the United States. Bill Roth, always we can count on him for the big picture perspectives. He pointed to really the moral dilemma that Citizens United created. Essentially, there are 2 business leadership challenges to that court case. The first is morality, and the second is when a competitor uses Citizens United to win competitive advantage. He continued to say that Citizens United has legitimized lobbying as a business strategy for winning market share. So the optimistic view would be that businesses lobby for values that align with their customers' values, but of course the economic logic would expect businesses to use the powers granted by Citizens United to win competitive advantage. So this really sort of puts businesses in a bind between the ethics and the long-term view on the one hand of values-based business compared to really hard-nosed financial business. Key point number 4 was the notion of perpetual political activism. And here again, Joss Tantrum chimed in with a couple of key points. He was saying that companies are really politically active all the time nowadays, and that those of us involved in sustainability and responsibility may perceive these activities as being positive on the one hand, or being a misuse of power for political ends on the other hand. And he pointed to the conundrum of, how do we define what's good activism or good politics? Is it just when it aligns with our own goals and our own agendas? So he was proposing maybe making a distinction between activism for private gain versus activism for public good, which of course can align with private gain. Advocacy is tricky. Bruce Clafter, who's been a consistently strong voice throughout the board, said it's quite difficult to align political positions with the views of leaders, shareholders, employees, and other partners, because these are often large, disparate groups with their own views that can be quite diverse. So he just really pointed to the treachery of navigating this landscape in the context of the sort of omnipresent business case for corporate social responsibility, sort of looking at that nexus where business meets the responsibilities and ethics of companies. Finally, we ended up with the notion that political activism is optional. To what degree do companies need to engage in politics? So Maria Leo really pushed the conversation a bit, pointing to companies that are privately owned, especially family or founder owned, then they really can support the activism that they want. And in a free economy, employees can choose to participate with that company or not. Likewise for consumers voting with their dollars. That met with some pushback, and we also had a counter view from Lise Lauren, who said that when advocacy aligns with business goals, it can make sense and be the ethical thing to do to advance that kind of advocacy. But she doesn't think that a company that doesn't advocate is unethical. So you can be ethical without having to be outspoken about your values. The next theme that we're launching into is around the short-term financial imperatives versus the long-term value creation imperatives, and this distinction between private companies that can make those decisions more readily with more latitude compared to publicly traded companies, which really have to answer to shareholder demands, which can often be short-term financial profit demands.
Awesome, Bill. This has been incredibly helpful and insightful. The conversation is certainly very intriguing about where political activism, as well as the political forces that are driving retail ethics. And again, thank you greatly for your facilitation, and look forward to the next one.